Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the remote energy management with our special guest, Ryan from Cold Energy Automation. And today we're going to talk about three different applications. Actually, let me get forward here to the next slide. We're going to talk about three different applications that Ryan is going to show you from Cold Energy. And actually, Ryan, I apologize. I should say Cold Energy Automation. But before we do that, before I hand things over to Ryan, I am going to do a brief overview of Indusoft, really just a slide or two, and I'm going to talk about some Indusoft resources. And then what I thought I would do would be to complement what Ryan is going to show you. I'm going to, for those of you who haven't seen this before, I'm going to do a quick demonstration in Indusoft Web Studio of our feature called Mobile Access, and show you just how easy it is to view and interact with screens via a smartphone, a tablet, or any HTML5 web browser. So as we get going here, just some logistics. We can't hear you on this type of webinar. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel on the WebEx interface. And don't forget, we will be recording this webinar, and we'll post it on our website usually within a couple of days, and we'll send you a survey. Let us know how we did. We'd love to hear from you, and let us know how we're doing, what you'd like to see webinar-wise in the future, and we'll try to roll that into our agenda. Also, we have quite a few of these already recorded that we've been doing over the last few years, so feel free to look on our website for those. Let's see here. As we get going, if you didn't know, Indusoft has been around since 1997, and in 2013, late 2013, Indusoft was acquired by Invensys, and then in early 2014, we were actually acquired by Schneider Electric. But we've been staying focused on our long-term game plan and product plan, so that's where we're at today. If you didn't know, we were the first HMI package for Windows CE. And why would you care about that? Well, Windows CE, being an embedded operating system, is often a very small footprint running on very low horsepower computers. So it helps us keep focus of being very efficient in our memory usage and our objects and things of that nature, small footprint. So we stay very efficient in how we generate the code. We're the first to have a web product with XML integration. We have a patent for our database connectivity. So that's, if you haven't seen our database connectivity and how easy that is, take a look at some of our previous webinars, or maybe even our training video, part of our training video series that's free. And take a look at that, because that's really kind of unique. Also, we were the first to have native support for OPC UA, and even though we have over 250 built-in drivers, we're still a very active OPC Foundation member. I know our development team participates in the interoperability workshops with the OPC Foundation, and I myself have given presentations all over the world with the OPC Foundation, so we're very active within that organization as well. We have multi-touch support and HTML5 integration. If you hopefully we'll get a chance to see that. Sometimes the WebEx interface doesn't allow me to do that, but we'll give it a try here today. Well, you'll see how easy it is anyway. And recently released is our runtime called IoT View, specifically for Linux and VxWorks, and soon coming other operating systems as well. So embed Indusoft into something like a valve or a controller, smart flow meter, that kind of thing. So if you weren't aware of this, we've got quite a few different awards that we've won over the years, and we're real proud of the Control Engineering Awards, because that's voted on by readership. And I'd like to announce that you can vote for this year's award. Vote for us, please. And you can check out on our blog, we have a link to how to vote for the two different awards that we're up for now. So you can go to our blog, or you can follow this link to get there. I would like to thank you, and especially since it's voted on by you guys. As we get started, and before I hand this over to Ryan, I wanted to mention all the different case studies that we have. We've got quite a few case studies that we publish on our website, and Ryan will actually be highlighting one of those that we did on cold energy automation. So please take a look at those, and depending on what type of industry that you're in, whether it's building automation or energy or things like that, always good to take a look at maybe some of the ones that are not in your industry to see how Indusoft solved some problems or issues that customers might have been having for their previous products before they switched to Indusoft. So some resources. If you go to our website, you can find the cold energy automation case study. For example, here I'm going to open up the website. This is Indusoft.com. And if you scroll down, you'll see hopefully everybody found the link to the webinar today. But very easily on that, the link to the webinar today is a link to the case study. But you can also find those here under marketing, case studies, and you can find those right on the website, so you can see just how many that we have, quite a few going back a number of years. So I don't even know how many we have at this point, but yeah, we can break them down by categories as well. So you can see some of the information that Ryan is going to be presenting. Hopefully I don't steal your thunder, Ryan, but some of the information and what they may have run into before using Indusoft and how Indusoft helped them be successful in their project going forward. In addition to that, let me move this off screen here, at least minimize this. A link to user interface. One of the things that I noticed when I was reviewing or doing a trial run with Ryan is that they created a really nice user interface within their project. And we did, a while back, we did a user interface webinar, and I wanted to give you guys a link to that in case that was something that you wanted to pay attention to. So if we open that up, actually, this is going to open up another browser instance here off screen. Let me pull that down in here. And so that user interface webinar, it's about an hour long, and it covers a couple of different topics, not only the user interface that you create as part of your project, but the specific user interface within Indusoft Web Studio, the development environment. So please feel free to check that out. And also, Ryan has used some really nice symbols. Sorry about that. I was trying to go back here. And Ryan has used some really nice symbols and created his own within his project. And I wanted to also show that there's, in addition to our training videos on symbols, we have a webinar that we did back a little while ago. And let's see, I'm grabbing the wrong window here. Let me pull this back in. So this is a webinar that we did back in February of 2014, creating your own symbols. And I think I actually did this webinar, and I actually created a 3D gauge with some labels around this, and really go to the extensive level of creating something that's not just a simple slider like we do in the training class, but we get really in depth in how to do some of the symbols. And I really like some of the symbols that Ryan created for his project. And the fact that Ryan's project is talking about remote, we have quite a few different security and cybersecurity related blog posts, as well as webinars that we've done with guest speakers. So here's one specifically, this link here, where we talk about cybersecurity and remote applications as well. So before I hand it over to Ryan, I wanted to just, for those of you who are not familiar with the Indusoft Web Studios capability that we have called Thin Clients, we have 3 different Thin Clients. Here is one called Web Thin Client. We have Secure Viewer, and then we have Studio Mobile Access, or SMA. Sometimes we just call this Mobile Access. Well, why am I showing you this? Because Ryan took advantage of some or all of these type of thin client solutions, and really what they are is each of these thin clients are typically remote to the main HMI or SCADA system running Indusoft Web Studio, And this allows you to get graphics and data remotely without needing the high-end horsepower that it might take to run the real application. And you can get the screens, the graphics, the data remotely and interact with those. And there's three different ones for three different reasons and three different usage. For example, WebSync client requires Internet Explorer. We did this one a long time ago, actually very early on in the product life cycle of Indusoft Web Studio. And this is typically meant to be used in an office environment, though it doesn't have to be. So picture this: if you've got a machine or some process where you're running Indusoft Web Studio, let's say on the machine, then you have let's say a production manager or maintenance supervisor, quality personnel that steps into their office, opens up on their desktop PC, opens up Internet Explorer, and then points to the real HMI running on the machine. They can view and, with security, optionally interact with those screens and see the real graphics and the real data. They don't need anything installed. They just point it at the IP address and away you go. So that's what's really nice about this, is because the license resides on the runtime. They don't have to license their desktop PC, and they just open up an Internet Explorer and go. But a lot of our customers said, hey, we like that idea, but we want to use this on the factory floor as a kind of a secondary HMI, maybe on the opposite side of the machine, or if it's a long machine or a long process, maybe elsewhere in the plant. So we came up with this client called Secure Viewer. And with this, you don't have the Internet Explorer browser frame around the window. It goes edge to edge, and it looks just like another HMI, when really it's getting its graphics and its data from the main HMI. And again, that's called Secure Viewer. And we'll often use this as a way to show large screen production monitoring, or for those of you who are familiar with that concept, an and-on system where you might show production and quality data on maybe a big screen TV, a 60, 70, 80-inch screen hanging from the rafters in the production environment. And the third type of technology that we have is one called Studio Mobile Access. And we came out with this a few years ago, and we've been really enhancing this in the product as we go along. And what this is you can view and interact with the screens remotely, because what we've done now is we've allowed you to publish the screens as HTML5. I don't know if you can see this buried down in the graphic here, but it's based on HTML5. And so it's really platform agnostic or operating system agnostic. So you can view it on a Windows Explorer 11. You can view it on Android, Safari, Chrome, on Linux, a browser called Chromium, again, Safari, Internet Explorer. So there's lots of different ways to view and interact with this. But what's really nice is now you can do this on a smartphone or a tablet, whether it's an Apple product, an Android product, or really any HTML5 browser that'll be able to get you that information remotely. So it really opens up things, whether you're distant, as Ryan is going to show you, from your application, or elsewhere in the plant, not standing right in front of the machine or the process. And I'm going to give it a go and try to demonstrate that for you right now here in just a couple of minutes. We'll see if we can't get that going. Before I do that, just another couple of things. So I just went through these three different types of thin clients. You might have a local HMI on a machine or a process, but another way to deploy is without a monitor. Maybe it's on a remote pumping station, or maybe you're not going to view it on a screen locally. So WebSync clients, or maybe a remote pumping station, or something that might have satellite communications, let's say, or cell communications, mobile communications, and you might not need a screen locally. Or in addition to that, we can do deployment like in a control room with a video wall. Here we show 6 monitors together. The largest I've personally seen has been 8 70-inch monitors tied together. It was very impressive. That can be a lot of information. Indusoft Web Studio has the capability of showing screens as small as 240 by 240 pixels, or as large as 10,000 by 10,000 pixels. And if you do the math, 10,000 by 10,000 is actually 45 high definition monitors. So it's a 5x9 video wall, and if you can find the hardware to support it, we support that resolution. We can also deploy in a server type environment, so it might be remotely through the plant, collecting data from different PLCs, different lines, or even in the cloud, doing remotely via an Amazon cloud or a Rackspace cloud or Microsoft Azure, a lot of different environments there, so there's different ways to deploy that. So before I hand it over to Ryan, what I'm going to try to do here is do a very quick demonstration of how we can do Studio Mobile Access. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a brand new project here, and we'll call this webinar. And today is 2015-11-11, and I'll create this project, and we'll do it my full screen here, which is 1920 by 1080. And once this gets going here, I'll insert a new screen and just put a couple of objects on the screen to so we can see those. Now, we're improving this all the time, but I don't know the actual percentages. 90–95% of the objects are currently supported. You can find a list in our help system on what we have supported. But I'm going to put, what I'm going to do is just put a bar graph on the screen. And for those of you who have seen me do demos before, you've seen me do this a million times. I'm just going to take that rectangle and apply the bar graph animation, and maybe I'll put a tag on here called temperature. Kind of fitting compared to Ryan's cold energy projects. We'll have something called temperature here, and we'll make that tag an integer tag, and that'll go from 0 to 100. It'll grow in a vertical direction upward. And then I'll grab a symbol from our symbol library, and we'll just grab, before I do that, I'd like to show you, if you weren't aware of this, we came out with some new symbols in version 8. We've added some tanks. We've added some new motors, some nice 3D shaded motors, some valves. So in addition to the valves that we had, we have some additional ones. And we're also, if you're not aware of this, we're doing symbols of the week. So on our website, you can download those symbols of the week. And if you're at version 8, most of those are included. But if you have any needs for symbols, let us know. And we'd be happy to possibly take a look at those and create those and add those into the product. So before I get going here, let's see, sliders. I'm going to add slider 1, and I'm going to tie that to that tag called temperature. And when I run this and save this as, just name this as screen main, and we'll make this the startup screen, and we'll just make sure this works before I publish this. And we created this technology using HTML5 for a couple of reasons. Number one, let me show you, make sure this works here. The reason why we used HTML5 is we found several of our competitors were creating apps so that if you needed to use this on an Android device, an Apple device, a phone, a tablet, you had to download different apps for different devices, and that's something that maybe you or your customers or your end users or even we don't want to have to maintain. So this just allows you to open up a browser and point to it. So let's see if we can get this to work. So what I'm going to do is go back to my development environment, stop the project, and now that I have that screen created, I'm going to publish and save the screen as HTML. And it says I have to have the TCP/IP server enabled, and just telling you about security here. And so I'm going to save that screen as HTML. Now that I've done that, I can go into the Thin Client Mobile Access setup, and I've got a couple of different options here. When this comes up, it will give me the ability to create a very simple interface using gauges or what we call widgets. Here I'm going to put the tag in this section called process values, and maybe I'll label this degrees F, or since we have more of an international crowd today, we'll do degree C. We'll be able to write to that, and we'll choose a circular gauge as the widget. Now this is a different interface than the screen itself, but because I published that screen, what I can do is go down here and choose from my list of screens, and I'll give this main screen. If I spelled screen right, that would help. And then what I'll do is save this, And let's see, again, telling you how to configure security. And we'll run this, and once I run this, then I'll be able to open up, let's say, an instance of Google Chrome and point to my IP address here. And this is quite often where WebEx will sometimes have an issue with what I'm trying to do, or maybe I don't even know my IP address. Let's try 127.0.0.1. We'll point to IWS, and we'll point to the website there. And if all goes well, we should be challenged for security here. And loading. So far, so good. We get a little box up there with the username and password. I'll be really happy. But you see just how easy. I mean, it really only took me a matter of a minute or two to create this screen. There we go. And since I don't have any username or password in this project, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the little green button here. Now, the first thing that I enabled was the ability to see this as a gauge. So here's my degree C that I set up, and you can see the value there. If I keep this in the forefront, keep my project here, you can see that the value there is 40. If I go and click on this, and I can either type in this box down here, or I can change the set point here and then write that back. You can see on the application over here that it's written that. In addition to that, I can go into my screen remotely. Now, this might be something that you would have on a tablet or a smartphone, this instance of this browser, but for this webinar, I'm just doing this here locally. So here you can see that I can actually scale that up in Zoom, and I can make those changes remotely. So good, that went fairly well. So with that, just wanted to demonstrate that, and then talk about connectivity and all the different devices that we talked to. I'd like to hand it over to Ryan.
Fantastic. Good morning or good evening, depending on your time zone. Thank you, Scott. Welcome everybody to the webinar this morning. Thank you for joining me, and thank you, Indusoft, for having me. This morning's topic is remote energy management, and also cover two other applications we developed for refrigerated cold storage and fruit ripening. The three applications had some similar challenges, and the solutions we came up with using Indusoft had some common threads. As mentioned by Scott, my name is Ryan Malsom, and our company is Cold Energy Automation. I'm a part owner in the company and a director. I've also completed an electrical trade, refrigerated mechanics trade, and I've happily spent the last 10 years in refrigerated automation and building management systems, or BMS. Our company was formed in 2011 and grew out of 10 years in the electrical and refrigerated contracting game. What we noticed was that the market was oversupplied with automation equipment and undersupplied with good quality service. Our company has been an Indusoft certified systems integrator since 2012 and navigated our way through a whole bunch of Indusoft applications so far. They've ranged from energy reporting systems, sports clubs, supermarkets, dairy farms, cold storage facilities, and even a couple of tugboats at one point. We found Indusoft to be really flexible and helpful in meeting our customers' needs. At Cold Energy, our principles are pretty simple. We try to operate with a high level of technical skills, maximize our flexibility to adapt to our customers' needs, and work hard with commitment, and above all, take responsibility for the projects that we do. Our company is customer-driven rather than application-driven. We've got a really, really close working relationship with our customers, and we find assessing their needs in the parallel parts of their business is a perfect fit for our flexible company and the flexible products we offer, one of which is Indusoft. So today's webinar will cover three of the Indusoft Web Studio applications created by us at Cold Energy. The first is an energy management and site monitoring application for remote areas. The sites are a retail outlet or a small supermarket located in Cape York, which is remote North Queensland. The role of Indusoft in these installations is monitoring and visualization. The second is a fruit cold storage application. The facility stores about 7,000 tonnes of fruit and also operates as a fruit packing facility. It's located in Shepparton in Victoria, and Indusoft's role is monitoring of the PLCs, the variable speed drives, and we also do some scripting control functions. The third and last one we'll have a look at is a fruit storage and ripening application. It's located in Melbourne in Victoria, and in Indusoft's role on that one is monitoring the PLCs and also helps out with some of the scripting control for the actual ripening process. The first application, energy management, and takes place in some of the remotest parts of Australia. So you can sort of see the map there. We're located in Queensland, the orange state there. And to give you some kind of frame of reference, these sites are within Queensland, which is roughly twice the size of Texas, with about 17% of its population. Cape York's the most northern part of Queensland, and where these sites are located, they only actually hold about 1% of the state's population. So the physical size of the area is quite large, and the population's pretty low. Our friends at Google estimate it's a 16-hour car ride one way to one of our most northern sites from our office in Cairns, and that's about 500 miles, which is mostly dirt road and corrugated, so it's a long old trip. The operation of these stores is influenced heavily by the seasonal nature of the location. So during the dry season, they're accessible by road, but during wet season or monsoon season, they're cut off. So air travel and coastal barges is really the only way in. The challenge for us, some of these notes are also in the case study, so by all means check it out. But the challenge for us was really improving the previous systems, which were totally independent, no reporting, no logging, arming, or interoperation at all. So we need to offer the customers something that was robust, reliable, and suited to running a retail application. So we needed to make sure that we didn't supply a product that had been forced down from sort of an industrial site or, like a DMS, sort of a towering office block sort of application. It had to be intuitive, offer some trending, some traceability, alarming for multiple vendor systems, something which, as you see as we go through the slides, it's a big part of our role in our business is integration. Some of the systems on these sites weren't determined at the time of what we were trying to come up with, so we needed something that was flexible with a bunch of different protocols to allow maximum troubleshooting later on down the track. The simplicity of the system was paramount. In no uncertain terms, it needed to be practical and easy without any kind of sales fluff or technical trickery. And the cost was always a factor. They were branding it as economic viability, but we needed a product that offered a lot and costed a little. The solution that we came up with involved us selecting a lot of the automation hardware. We also actually did the switchboard manufacture for the site. We opted for independent, localized control for some operational redundancy, and then we interfaced Indusoft over the top of the site. We used panel mount. A panel mount PC running the runtime served as the communications hub and the main display for the site. It was a simple 1500 run tag license. It was adequate for the amount of systems that we had and the overall system tag count. The multiple vendor communications we ended up with were all Modbus, RTU, and TCP, and we used the standard Indusoft drivers library with ModBU and MOTCP. The remote connectability portion of the project we achieved using cellular 3G modems. Now that catered for all the remote desktop sessions from PCs or smartphones, tablets. That was really one of the main options we came up with because it was simple, it was easy. These days there's a whole bunch of different remote desktop session products you could use. They're all pretty robust, pretty bolt-on, so we thought it worked really well. It gave our customers some choice, so they weren't sort of locked into one particular thing. It also supported all the email alarming features that we wanted to use in Indusoft. and it provided a secondary security layer to separate the corporate network and the automation network, which was really a non-negotiable from the client. A general overview of the automation hardware we used on site included some store lighting and security monitoring PLCs with a lot of Allen Bradley Modbus TCP, refrigeration system for the bulk storage and product display. Used a lot of small point sort of smart thermostats. These are used for a typical single line temperature display you'll see in most supermarkets, bars, that sort of thing. Electronic expansion valves are used for energy efficiency, which we interface with. Variable speed drives, which these days are everywhere. And that was a mixture of Modbus, TCP, and RTU. The air conditioning system also used some PLCs and a bit of proprietary stuff. And we had a number of smart CT energy meters, which you'll see in the vision. And finally, we had a bit of a system add-on, which kind of sort of ended up being quite large, which was some automated transfer switches and a standby diesel generation set. So because we had the flexibility of Indusoft and the products we'd offered, we basically added those couple of items on at the end. As you'll see, they ended up visually quite good. So now we'll go to the application. I had permission from the customer to do a bit of a live demo, but we thought best to be safe, we'll start a small video. So this is the application as it was running live a couple of days ago. So it starts with a bit of a site overview to show you sort of generally what the store manager would see at the touchscreen. We'll start with the energy metering overview. So the data displayed there is basically everything from the smart CT energy meters, and it shows a bit of a general layout of where the automatic transfer sets and the diesel gen set ended up. So each one of those buttons offers a pop-up, which we'll go into and we'll see in the detailed overview. So there we used a lot of visualization, a lot of visual tags to really show exactly what was happening. Each ATS, again, with Modbus RTU, gives us a lot of data where you can remote in under problematic situations and really see the timings, what's happening. We've got the same with the genset. So from a service perspective, again, this was a fantastic feature. We could see how many starts it had, things like oil pressure, coolant temperature, actual RPMs, what state it's in. So that was a must for our customer in that remote location. Now we also did we used some of the power of the emailing and scheduling inside of Indusoft to actually do a monthly test. So you can see down the bottom there we've got a general maintenance tag. And in there it shows what month and what time, and it sends out a couple of emails before the generator starts and during the test to basically do an offload test off-site. So we thought that feature worked really well. Here's a bit more about the further ATSs and system that we had on site. We used the general applet for trending, which the customers like. They find it easy to drive. We did a couple of help videos to help out some of our customers, and since then we've pretty much stuck with it. The air conditioning overview was more general integration, so the customer from here could see what's running, what's not, if the security's armed, disarmed. We also used a lot of text data links to allow them to change set points. Now we'll move into the bulk freezer system, which essentially stores the stock for the site. Now on this page, there's a fair amount of information coming from a few different sources of the integration that we did. So around sort of the main parts of the page is pretty much everything that's coming out of the smart thermostats. And then we further integrated the variable speed drives and the electronic expansion valves. So as a service tool, again, it was quite visual. The technicians can remote in, they can see exactly what's running, the pressures of the system, any faults, energy consumption, generally if the drive's ready to go or not. So as a service tool in a remote location, definitely required. The same with the electronic expansion valves. I mean, these can be problematic at times. So having an option where the refrigeration mechanic contractor can log in, see what's going on, pretty much all there at the touch of a button, we thought was really great. We could also just use pop-up screens, which, navigation very simply from a touch screen perspective, which is what this is displayed on. Very, very simple to use. Because we had the power of the integration, we could pull in more data, basically just for additional help for the customer. Now, we also had a site network status because of the amount of Modbus devices we had on site. We came up with a way of visualizing what points were alive or on the system, not on the system. And to do that, we actually used some of the tag properties available through Indusoft, and that's one of the points I'll go through at the end of the webinar to sort of go into a bit more detail on how we came up with this graphic and some of the points that we used. I quite like the general sort of alarm data object. We use that a fair bit on most of our projects to give the customers an overall view of what's in alarm and historical alarms. So that's what's coming up now. We use pretty much just a simple visualization tag to to swap between current alarms or history alarms. Again, we just used the proprietary logging in Indusoft. The site didn't really need SQL. Now the last page that you'll see here is we actually store a lot of the system documentation on site. So to do that, we use the ActiveX control for Adobe Reader, which the customers really like. Essentially, it puts all the documentation for their site in one spot where they can assess it or they can look at it. The contractors can look at it. For us, we included things like the general manuals, the data sheets for the equipment. We also included things like the schematic drawings and the products that we used. It just adds another level of available data and traceability for the customer. And because we could use those ActiveX controls, it really does create one place on site where not only can you see the plant, but you can also find out how it's meant to work or what it's meant to do. So again, this is from panel touchscreen. Easy to operate, single click buttons, click and drag with the ActiveX control. All fantastically simple to use. Okay, so the next application we did, or I'll show today, was for a fruit cold storage facility. Now, the majority of the fruit stored on this site is apples and pears, and the time frame ranges from sort of a few days to a few months. So they really need to keep track of data and how it all is working on site. Comprises of 23 cold rooms and has the capacity of around 3 megawatts of ammonia cooling. Indusoft monitors the cooling system and room conditions on site. It also does some scheduling and actually initiates the hot gas defrost for each room. The total site energy is also monitored, and this data is critical for the customer so he can adopt his own energy management strategies and also demand tariff limiting to make sure that at any one time he's not running more plant than he should to prevent excessive energy bills. The facility handles upwards of about 30,000 bins of fruit a year, and they can't really afford for any kind of failure. The challenges for this site were generally it had a growing need for a total site management system that included all the cold rooms and the refrigeration plant. The very recent upgrades and upcoming expansions on the site also required a bit of vision for system continuity and serviceability. The previous systems they had in there were proprietary. They didn't really offer any kind of integration options, which tended to just fail the future-proof of the site and hamstring any kind of serviceability. Any upgrade to the site would be done in the quieter season, but they needed to really maintain fruit storage integrity at the time because they unfortunately couldn't just afford to shut down a complete facility. The visualization in multiple locations was required, mainly in the control boards around site, but also from a central service location. Trending and data logging to satisfy the requirements for fruit export was also a potential requirement for this customer, and remote access for runtime monitoring and future system development was required, along with a little bit of multi-vendor system integration. The automation hardware selection and switchboard manufacture was again done by us. This ensured that some of the system design, which was in a sense decentralised, incorporated some marginal redundancy through local PLC control, but the monitoring and non-critical event scheduling could be done by Indusoft. Indusoft was the communication hub for the automation network and running on a server PC on this site, and provided the web thin clients for the control panel PCs and users on the corporate intranet. The thin client solution that we used was something that Scott mentioned at the start. We essentially provided thin clients around the place running on easy-to-use Internet Explorer kiosk mode PCs. So we opted for PCs rather than HMIs in the local switchboards. We ran Internet Explorer to view the thin client, but it also allowed us to use that PC for remote sessions. So in an individual control panel, it would show the Indusoft thin client, but in the background we could actually do things like PLC maintenance, variable speed drive programming. It really gave us a dual purpose of those screens. So we thought that was a fantastic option that not only looked great, but also helped out our customer. The multiple vendor communications was achieved using both Modbus RTU and TCP protocols again. We used the standard libraries from Indusoft. They worked great. The remote PC and smartphone access was again just through remote desktop. Worked fantastic. Really gave us an avenue to do modifications and also further development on the site. So, given the fact that it's in Shepparton in Victoria and I'm in Cairns in North Queensland, it takes me 4 hours to fly there. So if I can jump in and add a few screens or update some bits and pieces, the ease at which we could publish a web thin client meant that I could just do it from here. I could republish, restart the application, and essentially, the 4 or 5 panels we've got on site would automatically update. Now we'll go to another quick video of the application. Get this started. So again, the main drag is essentially an overview of the whole site. Shows what systems are running, which ones are turned on, what state they're in. Essential for an operator to sort of see this information. So around the facility, there may be some screens running the main. In the refrigerated plant room, we move to this screen, which shows a lot of visuals. So the plant, the actual physical pictures of the plant we used, so people could tell what area of the plant they were looking at. This really helped out with things like the liquid pumps, so people could actually look at the photo, see what the liquid pump was, and go and see when general faults had occurred. We also used a few general symbols there, straight out of the Indusoft library. Worked great. We also did a fair bit with the screw package on site. So we essentially it had an old HMI on it. We reiterated it with Indusoft. We came up with this general display, and we used a couple of pop-up pages to allow the customer to actually see during the starting sequence what would occur. So as the screw compressor starts, each one of those displays goes green. It also shows a short timer to tell the operator what's occurring. Should anything go wrong, it's a simple click to another pop-up screen, easy to navigate to, and there's your faults. They go red. Works really well. We also, on this particular site, do a lot of data logging. So this is all SQL on this site. We came up with some options for the customer to send us data if we were, really wanting to look at some graphs and they wanted to show us. So we came up with a little export screenshot button. Pretty much click the button, prompts you with some messages. This is all done through command scripting. Asks you what you want to do. Name the screenshot. I call this one webinar. It's pretty original. Then once that's done, you can then click on the select an email button, which is another small scripting button that we came up with. You can select the picture that you just screenshotted. Then go to open, and then again you're prompted by a few scripts to ask you, what's your email? Pop that in there. That's my email address. So all you spammers out there, that's the goal. Simply put the address in, select OK, ask you to clarify to make sure that what you're putting in is what you want. That's the correct email. Off we go. So now it'll ask you, and just do one last check. You sure that's what you want? Yes, it definitely is. And then now we get a positive feedback from the system to say yes, the email was sent. I'll go through those two buttons later on, just to sort of show how we came up with some of that stuff. Now we go to one of the general rooms. So it'll show generically what we produce for every room on site. So for us, this was sort of a cut and paste exercise. We came up with some of these symbols ourselves. You get to sort of click on some manual operators and bits and pieces on the side. One click again, quite easy. A pop-up page for people that are interested in further stuff. So a lot of that's got to do with energy saving options and some additional calibrations. We also did some set point scheduling on site. So this was an energy saving feature that you can select through Indusoft. You get a nice little drop-down box there. Each one of those options populates more options on this on the screen there, and that's all done through scripting. Now it'll take us back to the main drag, and we'll look quickly into just another room. So this sort of really shows that it really was cut and paste. We did a lot of the same engineering. One of the things our customer wanted was, part of their exporting option was, they wanted to make sure that from the SQL database, they could come up with a way of exporting some particular probes. So we gave them this page where essentially you click the probes that you want, you click a start date, enter in some data, and it starts to formulate a string. Now that string is then basically combined with some other data used in the selection up the top, the green boxes, probe 1, 2, 3, 4. What it does is it combines all that information into one string, and then uses it in a script to produce an SQL query. That SQL query then basically populates an Excel spreadsheet. Click on the email button, very similar to before. Shows you the date and time of the last thing you produced, and then down the bottom shows whether or not the email went out okay. That's another button I'll be going through at the end of the webinar, just to sort of show what we did. There was also a bit of electrical load management that the customer wanted, so they had some controlled atmosphere equipment that they wanted to basically do some scheduling. So we just used some simple tags in Indusoft and a bit of scripting to give it some time clock application. The last screen is the energy management. The customer quite often jumps on the screen, has a bit of a look, finds out when his peaks and troughs are, and starts to think about how he operates on site accordingly. So that's that application. So the last application of the three is the fruit storage and fruit ripening facility. So this project added 14 multi-purpose cold rooms to the site. Each room can be individually cooled, heated, humidified, and ripened fruit. Indusoft provides the general monitoring and coordination for the ripening procedure on this site, and we also use Indusoft as a bit of a protocol gateway to pass a bit of data around. The system's totally decentralized, with each room having its own PLC and a local proprietary HMI, which is the picture you can see there. And the system currently provides ethylene controlled ripening for bananas, but they're also going to be starting to move towards mangoes and avocados also. The challenge of this site was it was an existing large facility. They were retrofitting these 14 rooms into the facility, and we had some existing refrigeration components of the plant were visualized with an alternate SCADA package. The total site had 3 different SCADA packages running. So one of the challenges was we had to offer them a product that we could happily say would be all-encompassing should they decide to move down that track. And given the fact that Indusoft is so scalable with tag counts, the amount of drivers that you want, the amount of thin clients you want to run, that worked really well for us, and it gave our customer the right option. The system had to follow some really specific processes for fruit ripening, which we did, but the customer also had some flexible improvements and evolving needs that they wanted to make sure that we could do. The site physical layout of the plant required visualization in a number of areas, and the real goal for the client was smartphone and tablet integration for future. They also had some trend data logging, which was crucial for hassle food management and ensuring that the stringent customer requirements for a quality product were met. Even though the system integration was with a single vendor, the potential site-wide integration as part of those other packages was really a future need. The solution. The selection of the Indusoft MTX platform for the rooms ensured that the modular control brief with local HMI could be achieved. The PLCs allowed for a redundant, simple and repeatable system with commands accepted from the local HMI and Indusoft SCADA in real time. So for those people out there that do a lot of serial integrations, local HMIs and SCADA packages on the same networks can sometimes cause a lot of drama. So we found that worked really well. The monitoring, email alarming, trending and ethylene tank control scheduling is all completed with Indusoft. On this site we used Indusoft version 8. The implementation was to make sure that we future-proofed for smartphone and tablet integration. One of the other clients that Scott mentioned was IoT View, which is essentially where this site will be headed. Communications was achieved through good old Modbus again, standard libraries from Indusoft, and remote desktop access was used again for off-site monitoring. So there's 2 tools that we really used a lot of. And now we'll head into the application. Another fantastic video. So this is basically, again, this is generically what the customer will see. They get a bit of visual of what's occurring on site. We'll go into one of the cold rooms. You know, each room, the backdrop, which you can see the top, right and bottom stays the same, and we use pop-up pages to change the visual image in the middle. We found that was visually appealing for the customer, and they liked it, and they quite liked the visuals of the buttons as well down on the bottom right. We also used a little trend pop-up page, which works really well for us. So essentially you click on one of the temperatures there, and you get a small pop-up page. Now to do that we used a couple of scripts and some more tag properties, and we sort of pass them to and from. That's another thing I'll go through at the end of the webinar. We think that works really well. We also gave the customer an overall trend logging page, which will pop up in a sec after this one. So I mean that shows that you can click from button to button, and it uses the same page. Just changes the actual tag reference inside the trend object. When we go to the main trends down the bottom, this was the generic one that we use a lot of. So it gives the customer the opportunity to plot all kinds of things on site. We also use the security system, which on the main page you can see down here on the bottom left. It says logged in user as basic. So now we're going to log in as cold energy, so as one of the super users. And you'll see that on that generic cold room page, now there's a lot more data available and options to change. We found this was a good way of removing unused data for basic users to try and declutter or simplify the view. So it shows a little bit more detail there, and it actually allows you to change the real nitty-gritty of the actual operating system. We thought that worked quite well, and stopped a bit of confusion for the real basic users. Now we'll go down and we'll see some of the ethylene ripening control that we use on site. Now a lot of the scripting and bits and pieces on this page are done through Indusoft. So you can see there those room last gas is a tag property, timestamp, which works well. And there's also some queuing and bits and pieces we use with array tags, which is another point that I'll cover towards the end. The network map, again, we used it because we had a lot of serial equipment on site that could be turned off at random moments. So this gave the user one place to stop and view what's live, what's not, if they've got any network situation on their hand. System alarms, we use the alarm object, and we also use the event viewer. So on a site like this where they've got multiple people coming in and making small changes to suit themselves, we use the event viewer to keep track of what's happened, what's been changed, who's logged in, who's logged out, who's adjusted set points. Again, a customer requirement to make sure that they have some traceability on site. The alarms are also logged, so we actually log manual operations as well to make sure that everything's tracked and traced. We also use the ActiveX control for Adobe Reader, again, to make sure that everything was available for the customer. It really works very well, easy to operate, and all the data's there. So, with those buttons, we essentially pass a small string into the ActiveX control for Adobe, and it just simply repopulates what's available. We also used a couple of generic pop-up pages to show the legend. Because of Indusoft structure, we're sort of not really tied to the amount of pages that we use. So, we think the more the merrier. Makes it easy for someone to sort of look at something before they make the phone call to a technician. Bit of a site map just to show them the new plant that we've added, where some of the physical equipment is located. So what we thought worked well with Indusoft was the speed of engineering. So we'd had a bit of a play with some other starter packages, and we thought that how quickly we could engineer a new project was great with Indusoft. Because we do so much Modbus integrating, we found that the Modbus drivers were fantastic. We found in a couple of instances for faster engineering that we could actually copy the Modbus drivers and use multiple instances of the same driver. We just found that using the main driver sheet is actually a lot quicker than having to use multiple sheets inside drivers. We could also do things like increase the block size when we knew a certain number of Modbus addresses could be read at once. We could also change the max gap size and do some bit swapping for a whole driver sheet without having to do individual ones. We also found that we could do retries and timeouts for slow or legacy equipment without having to tie down other parts of the system. So we could do that by setting up the same Modbus driver with two different settings. We found that organising your own tag naming convention could be used for easy copy-paste, and using the replace option in Indusoft worked very well. Also copy and pasting into and from Excel works great, and pasting from pretty much any image editor directly into Indusoft was a massive saving of time, and time is money. So you could see in some of those screens they were pretty visually heavy with a lot of photos or pictures, and that's how we did it. The other thing we thought was, we love the alarm task for email and network communications failure. So we use the tag properties of quality and high alarm for timed alarm visualization with a little bit of scripting. We also did a bit of advanced time delay action for alarming. So I might just see if I can drag Indusoft over. There we go. And also drag over Excel. So the first point that I sort of spoke about there was multiple driver instances. So you can see here we've got MOTCA, which sort of seems like a bit of a weird driver name if you're not used to it. There's the Modbus TCP driver. What we did was we actually copied it. So you can do that inside the driver directory in Indusoft. And what we did was the energy meters on this particular site could only handle a small max block size. So to prevent having to slow down the communications bus for everything, we actually used a different block, and we could get a bit more, get a few more blocks in. So when you've got a lot of serial data, sometimes I think that's a good thing. We could also have individual timeouts and retries. So we thought that worked well. What else do I have? Look, the copy and paste. I mean, I know this is probably a very simple thing, but for us, sometimes simple is best. So with some systems, you can't do a simple thing like I'll just highlight that, copy, paste. Then I could do a find and replace on the word cafe, and maybe change it to store, replace all. Control C, Control V. Now, of course, it's asking me because I didn't have, the right names there. But essentially, you get the point. I mean, that in itself is a very fast way of creating a tag database. Now, that comes back to how you label your tags. So say no to a few of those, and then you'll see in our tag naming convention, the actual data is the same, but the prefix is different. So we think that works really well. On the graphics themselves, so if we go to the AC page, one of the things we like is this replace option here. So in those cold rooms where we had sort of 14, 15, 16 pages of the same data, we could simply use this again with a bit of copy and paste. We could basically put things in and out without too much drama, which led to quite quick engineering. The other thing I mentioned was doing cut and paste. So I could quite easily just copy So that's basically out of the email. Scott sent me to say, hey, come and do a webinar. Now, once we've got that in there, we can essentially just find out where it is. It's easy there. It's in the web folder. And then we could add, commands, visualization to it very, very easily. Now, that in itself, when you want to do some sort of high visualization graphics, is exceptionally quick and easy. Just have a quick look at the other application. So what we found worked well with the other application, which was the fruit cold storage facility, was the screenshot box, the email box, and the SQL box that we showed during the slide. So you can see there the functions that we used. Some of them were VB functions, VB script functions, and a lot of them were built in, made by our good friends at Indusoft. So if we have a quick look at one of those, so you can sort of see big. We've got the export screenshot button down the bottom here. Now, if I go to the command and we bring it up, you can sort of see that essentially the scripting was done inside of here. We used the say screenshot function there to to save the screenshot, we threw it in a nice public directory, which made it easy to email. And then when we go into the email button, essentially we've got some more bits and pieces. So the message box to create the questions that were asked, this RD file in, to select the document that you want to email, and then down here we've got the send email ext function, which also works very well. Now the other thing I said I would look at was our SQL export button. So if we look at that, essentially again we're sort of using a bunch of strings, which are a combination of what comes in and out of these buttons. We combine it all together into some bits and pieces. Some of you who are SQL gurus will see and recognize some of that information. And then what we do is we basically combine all that data into one string, which becomes an SQL query, and we call up this tag to one, which ends up in a script over here. And there, essentially, we're using the when execute to drive the SQL query. So that works really well. So the last application that I'll have a quick look at is the fruit ripening one that we did. So you can see it's a slightly different screen because it's in version 8. So what we liked in this one was utilizing the tag properties. The tag properties to create a string for some indirect tag referencing, retentive tags inside it, well, basically using a retentive array to store some data. The timestamp property, which was, a tag, and in the VB scripting we used a bit of for-to loops, which again we thought worked pretty well. I can bring that up. I'll give you a quick look at how we did that. On the main page, the button that we were clicking essentially uses a tag property to reference into a string. That string then gets passed into our trend pop-up page. And then we use an indirect tag reference to basically slot that tag into there. So essentially that means we had one little pop-up screen that we could continually use over and over and over. And the customers really liked the functionality of being able to just click one click and pop up a screen without having to navigate totally off the page. In our project tags, we created some arrays. These are integer arrays that are retentive. So they hold a bit of, they hold some data for us, which is essentially a queue of which rooms require ethylene. So these little queues here are actually those retentive tags and the data they contain. So we display the data, the queue position, and where that is in the array, and we actually use a visibility option if there's actually data in that section of the array to view whether or not it shows 1 to 12. We just found that visually a little bit more pleasing. In here we also use the timestamp tag property, which again works well. That's basically driven off the digital output, so the customer can tell the last time the room got some gas delivered. And the last one was when we utilize the array functions, we use the for loop here to basically shuffle data around within those arrays. So the PLCs we used on site, they didn't really necessarily have the smarts to really sort of crank out that sort of functionality. So we just basically hid it into Indusoft, and it works exceptionally well. So that's about it. So thank you very much for listening. There's all my glory contact details there. I hope everybody's still awake. And thanks again, Indusoft, and everybody for listening.
Ryan, thank you very much. Good job. Great job. we're going to open it up to questions. First of all, Ryan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. We're going to open it up to questions if there's any questions. I actually have a question, and I hope you didn't cover this, and I missed it because I actually had some networking issues going on in the background while you were presenting. But do you have any ideas, once this was installed, either percentages or amount of money that customers saved on energy efficiencies?
On one site, which was one of the real winners, they actually saved about 40%. Unfortunately, I can't claim all of that to our fantastic Indusoft engineering. A lot of it was infrastructure changes. But the real saving is the long-term data and information that they get out of it. I mean, we've all heard about big data and how important it is. But that's a long-term sort of saving that, without having too much data up our sleeve, we think we can put in at about 6%. So, that's a fair saving on a site, particularly in remote communities where power is a premium. We think it's a good thing.
That's long term, that can be huge. That's great. The system definitely pays for itself, and it's really nice to see that somebody understands. Your customers understand that taking the initiative and taking that upfront cost will pay for itself. They can't really afford not to do this, I think. There's a webinar that we did a few months ago that was another energy building automation kind of webinar. And I can't say the name, but we helped automate a fast food restaurant. And there were times where in the winter months they made it a little bit colder, like 2 degrees Fahrenheit colder in the restaurant during the winter, and 2 degrees warmer in the summer. And I think it saved them $7 million US dollars. So really big savings. So, all right, Ryan, again, we're going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat panel or the Q&A panel while we're talking here. And Ryan, I'd really like to thank you a lot, not only for doing this, but we've had, based on our surveys, we've had requests to actually show the applications in the Indusoft development environment and how you did that, and I think you illustrated that very well in highlighting those points and the different scripts that you did and how you did it. I was really impressed with the layout and the user interface of the screens that you have, and my hat's off to you. Really great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So at this point, I don't see any questions coming in either on the chat panel. Let me double check the chat panel again real quick. Nope, no questions. So I'm going to just kind of delay a little bit as I'm talking slower and rambling on, just in case there's any other questions. We've got a little bit over, but I think it was all great information. Ryan, I'd really like to thank you and thank our attendees for everything today, for your presentation, and for everybody joining us. And again, Ryan, thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
No worries.
And with that, since there's no questions, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. And thank you very much. Everybody have a great day.